Hello, our truth warriors, and welcome back to the Atlantic Underground podcasts. One of our good friends is returning back with us today. Love him or hate him, most can't debate him with his in depth knowledge of how this world works. We smuggled him into Nova Scotia during the pandemic border blockades, and we've had some incredible conversations over time. It's great to have back the undisputable champion of truth. It's the one and only Chris Sky. How are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. What an intro. Thank you very much, Chris.
Always a pleasure. Now, Chris, you've took a break from public appearances for a while. What's been happening and what have you been up to?
Well, I was working on family stuff. Unfortunately, my father passed away in December. So I'm the only son. I got two sisters. I don't know if anybody even knows that. And
Yeah,
I've been working at the family business since 1997, if you can believe that.
yeah.
I was literally child labor back then. But
Sounds like
but
my son.
yeah, exactly. I started really young. So I'm just working on that and winding down the estate so everybody can be taken care of, basically. And
Yeah.
that's going to take me probably the next 9 to 12 months. And for everybody that wants to know, my dad did take the vaccine against my wishes, and he had underlying health conditions, which is how his doctors convinced him to do it. And then he was diagnosed with a cancer they found in August, and he was dead by December. And this is a guy that would get screened for cancer every year. And they found a cancer, and within 12 to 13 weeks, something like that, he was dead. So I hope for everyone watching, whoever got it and having side effects, I'm sorry. And whoever didn't get it, God bless you. Thankfully, my sisters never got it. My mom did get it, and she's showing signs of having taken it as well, which really sucks because I wish I could have helped them. But yeah, I've been switching my time between Mexico, Colombia, and Canada. And when the weather got really bad in Canada, I try to stay out of there as long as I can. But I was back in Toronto for about a month and a half, and I was in Alberta for a few months in 2024. So,
Yeah.
but I've been largely traveling the world. I've been all over. I ended up having stints living all over Canada, United States, Mexico, even Serbia for a couple months, the UK, Turkey. So I've been around. I've been around and I've been watching and I've been taking notes, I guess you could say, about what's happening. And I'm not too happy about the status of Canada. Everybody's so happy that Trudeau got ousted, but what really happened? This
Yeah.
guy, this guy committed crimes against humanity, every type of crime you can think of, from theft, embezzlement to friggin' going roughshod on our rights, freezing people's bank accounts, taking people's business licenses. Uh, they're trying to put Pat King in jail and others for 10 years, 15 years for sitting in a car and honking a horn. Like, these are really big crimes. And what did he get? Oh, you're going to have to leave your job a few months early, even though we paid you for the full time that you were working there. So he gets early retirement. He's got a golden parachute of like 200 plus $1 million. And what's he going to do? The first thing he's going to do is leave Canada and go to where the mansion that he bought in Costa Rica. Latin America is the new best place to be. So imagine a guy that spent 8 years turning our country into a place that nobody wants to live, and he sets the example by leaving as soon as he can.
Well, let's hope he can afford adequate security while he's there, because I'm sure he can be gotten at wherever he goes now.
But yeah, but that's why he's leaving Canada too, because he doesn't want to have to worry about that. People won't even recognize him in Costa Rica, or they'll just think he's Castro, and they'll probably like him.
So, how are you enjoying life in Mexico? Do you think that this country will remain safe now, especially now it has a UN Agenda 2030 president?
Well, look what happened to the other 50 plus candidates. They literally lost their heads, and that's not a pun. They
No, no.
literally, yeah, for those that don't know, they decapitated, I can't remember the amount, but they murdered over 50 people that were running for president. So
Yeah,
Scheinbaum, obviously her name sounds bad. Obviously, we know that she came from California, Berkeley University, which is as far left wing as possible. We know that she's majoring in climate science, which is the biggest load of horse shit ever. So we know she has the UN agenda in her thing, but she's controlled
oh yeah,
tightly.
Yeah.
just like every other person that gets in power. And the biggest company and the biggest controller here, besides the cartel, is Pemex, the oil company. So I could see her getting to show her green agenda. I could see her pushing solar and it actually getting approved. Because why wouldn't you want to do solar here in Mexico, where you get so much sun? It actually makes sense,
Yeah.
and you can even use solar power to power water desalination plants because their big problem here is water all over Mexico and drought, which they can solve with desalination plants strategically placed all over the country. That's neither here nor there. But I don't think she's going to be able to cause as much harm as she would if she was like a Justin Trudeau or even a Donald Trump. And she only gets one term. So when she's gone, she's gone. I can see her increasing the debt to GDP ratio a little more than I would like, and they would have to rein that in. I could see gas prices and cost of living going up under her, but it's not just going to be because of her. It's going to be because of people like us, Chris. All of us expats that are coming here because we're coming with money and we're coming with an Americanized mindset for higher standard of living, and we're willing to pay for it. So we're driving up the cost of living here more than she is.
Yeah.
So I can't even really blame her. I was one of her biggest vocal critics before she got actually elected. But since she's been there, she hasn't really done anything. She's been doing the playbook of her predecessor virtually by the book.
Yeah.
So I
Have
think
you
I think she's more of a figurehead than a threat.
have you seen who her husband is?
No, that's
Her
a
husband,
very good point.
her husband is a high-ranking position in the Bank of Mexico, and they actually hang around with Larry Fink from BlackRock.
That's scary.
Yeah.
That's scary because I like the Mexican banking system, but I don't like it if they start working with people like that. But
No.
that's probably more for things like insider trading and investments where they can invest a lot of their money cross border and make ridiculous returns. So I can see them using that relationship for something like that more to enrich themselves than to harm us.
Yeah.
So even though it's not a good relation, I until they show me something, I can't say it would be bad for actual Mexican citizens yet.
Yeah. Yeah. We just have to wait and see. Now, our other
But
home of
it's
Canada.
definitely not something I wanted to hear.
No, 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 no good news, unfortunately. But our other home, Canada, meanwhile, appears to be undergoing a deliberate dismantling at the behest of its central bank for corporate interest. But what do you see in store for Canada?
Well, in the short term, I see good things. Because the biggest thing that was destroying our economy, besides COVID and the shutdowns, obviously, when those stopped, the biggest thing that was slowing our economy down was our weak dollar, but primarily it was our 5.5% interest rate. Absolutely ridiculous. Because from when the lowest interest rate was like 2.25 or 2.5, most people got mortgages at that time and bought houses at that time. But a lot of people got variable rate mortgages. So they bought it at 2.5%. And then after living there for 4 or 5 years, their mortgage rate doubled.
Yeah,
Doubled. So if you're paying 2,500, now you're paying 5 grand. So a lot of people just couldn't keep up. And for the other people that got fixed payment mortgages, when the interest rate doubled, now the payment you're making isn't even covering the interest. So every month you're paying, but you're falling further behind in debt. And then you get to the point where they're like, oh, buddy, you owe us like another 20, 30 grand on top of all the payments you made. And you can't pay it, so you lose your house. So that combined with just the high borrowing rates in general, that slowed down the crypto markets, that slowed down all the types of business starts, that slowed down all the developments, whether it was houses or it was condos. Anything that you're going to borrow money to build, it slowed down. And that's virtually everything. Not too many people build cash. The world runs on credit. So the interest rate was the number one marker for showing why Canada's housing market was crappy and why our economy is virtually in recession, even though they won't say so. But what happened? June, July, November, December. They did interest rate drop after interest rate drop after interest rate drop. We're currently at 2.75%, I believe, and we're going to have another interest rate drop more than likely in May and June. So by June, we could see ourselves at 2.5 or 2.25%. So I believe we're going to see a revival in the housing market, especially with new starts and especially with sales. Because before, not only were people behind on their mortgages, if they wanted to sell their house and they weren't first time home buyers to buy a new house, they couldn't get the amount of money they needed
yeah,
to be able to buy the next house. And construction costs were edging up every year. Meanwhile, housing costs were staying stable or even dropping. So you couldn't build new homes. You couldn't sell the home you had. We had a stalemate in the housing market. If the interest rates continue to drop, even and from where they already were, they dropped significantly. But if they drop even further, you're going to see people getting approved for much higher mortgages. So they'll be able to sell their houses for much more. They'll be able to have more buying power. Their dollar will go further. So we're going to see a revival in the housing market, I believe. And we might even see some upstarts and new businesses if they can get out the business loans for cheap. The only thing that was putting a damper on all of this was the potential tariff war with Donald Trump. But thankfully, that the Canadians capitulated, which we knew they had to do. And for anybody that doesn't understand that tariff war, I can explain it in literally 30 seconds. The United States has a $30 trillion economy. We have a $2 trillion economy. We export 350 billion to them. That's about 1.25% of their economy. So even if we stopped all exports to the United States, their GDP would drop by 1% and they could go to any of their other trading partners and make it up. So it literally would have no effect on them. Meanwhile, we import around 500 billion from the United States, which is 25% of our economy. Now, if we have a 3% drop in GDP for 2 consecutive quarters, we call that a recession. Imagine you have a 25% drop in GDP. That's called a massive depression or worse. So Donald Trump wasn't lying when he said that. And Trudeau going on TV and stuttering through his little speech trying to sound tough was the dumbest thing I ever heard. Because if we started that trade war with them, all the gains we were going to make in the housing market, the business startups, the lending, everything, even our dollar, all of it would have been destroyed, and we would have had another year of stagflation or higher inflation and no economic growth. But as it stands right now, I believe we're going to see a good year for the housing market in Canada and an even better 2026. But I fear that the rug pull is going to happen in 2027. I feel we're still going to be at war all over the Middle East by then. I still think the war in Russia is going to be going. For people that didn't believe, I was very critical of Donald Trump and his promises leading up to the election because he says all the right things like every politician, but his track record on coming through all of his promises isn't very good. Hillary Clinton's not in jail. The swamp hasn't been drained. The wall hasn't been built. Mexico didn't pay for it. In fact, Americans paid 5 times more protection than they were told that Mexico was going to be paying for. And so, what did Donald Trump say? The number one campaign promise: I'm going to end the war in Russia the day I'm inaugurated. What happened the day he was inaugurated? He didn't end the war, but he did stop funding, according to his advisors and everyone, to the Ukraine, which would end the war, considering the U.S. was the primary funder, the primary supplier of weapon systems, and not only weapon systems, very sophisticated weapon systems that need CIA American contractors to operate those systems. So when you're seeing, yeah, so people need to understand when you're seeing American weapons shooting hundreds of miles into Russia from Ukraine, those are not being operated by Ukrainian or soldiers. Those are being operated by CIA or other operatives in the U.S., which they are legally allowed to have on the ground under these NATO terms, a certain amount. Obviously, they probably have more than they're allowed, and obviously they're doing all kinds of other stuff. But what did Donald Trump just do a couple days ago? He made a deal with Zelensky to continue giving them money, to continue giving them weapons, as long as Zelensky allows the United States to mine rare earth metals. So this is a contract, the rare earth metals, and Donald Trump's trying to sell it to the Americans that we're going to get $500 billion from this rare earth metal. Well, how long do you think it's going to take to mine that rare earth metal? That's not something you can do in a week or a couple months. This is a multi-year mining contract. So that means they're going to have to be keeping this war going for that whole time. So the idea that, and for anybody who thought Donald Trump really wanted this war to stop, why would he? Number one, Russia is their number one enemy besides China. Right now, Russia's forces and their arms are getting whittled down, and they haven't wasted one American life. All they've been doing is sending money and weapons. War by proxy is very good for the United States because Russia's spending money, Russia's losing manpower, Russia's losing military technology, etc. So they're getting weaker. The U.S. isn't getting weaker. They don't care what happens to the Ukraine. Not to mention the people that fund Donald Trump's campaign and his lifestyle are all military contractors who are making billions of dollars. Not to mention the military contractors are loving this more than anybody because they're getting rid of all the old stuff. Like it's like going to a grocery store, finding all the stuff that's going to expire on the shelves and selling it and getting full pop for it, not even selling it at a discount, and getting full pop of our tax dollars paying for it. And then what happens to it? Half of these weapons, after we pay for them with our tax dollars, get resold to the Mexican drug cartels. So they get paid twice for these weapons, and they launder all the money. And then Zelensky complains that they didn't get the billions that they said they were going to give him. But in reality, it's just one giant circle jerk. So why would they ever stop that? That is the most successful, longest running, and largest scale money laundering and weapons scheme in the history of mankind. So you think they're going to stop that? It was their most profitable thing. Donald Trump was a genius to pardon the J6 protesters. It doesn't bother his handlers. It doesn't cost anybody any money or any power or any control over the citizens. It doesn't derail the Zionist agenda for Israel. And it gives him 1,000% hero status, legend status, makes him look like he cares, makes him follow through on one of his promises. And it inspires his base. And it should, because it really was a good thing. I'm not going to kill it. Yeah. He got out of the WHO, another good thing. But then what did he do 4 days later? He said, if they give us a discount, I'll put us back in. Did you see that?
Discount.
Yeah. He complained that they charge 500 million and China only pays 39 million. So he said, if they give us the same deal as China, I'll put us back in. So he's the classic bait and switch politician. He's no different than any other politician. He said he's going to end the wars in the Middle East. What did he do instead? He unbanned the 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs that were previously banned munitions, and he's sending them all to Israel so they can more efficiently carpet bomb their neighbors. And he's literally calling for the expulsion of all the people living in Gaza and trying to force Jordan and Egypt to take refugees when Jordan already has over 2.5 million Palestinian refugees. But they tell you it's only for temporary. Oh, yes, because once Israel bombed you, raped you, pillaged you, murdered you, destroyed your homes, rebuilt homes, and gave them to Jewish people and Israeli people, they're totally going to let you back into that area. No, this is a complete takeover. This is literally the definition of genocide. And they're telling them that they're giving the Palestinians a choice, and the choice is leave or die. Yeah. That's not a choice. It's ridiculous. And as long as Donald Trump supports that, he can never be called America first, period. Because you cannot put Israel before America and claim to be America first.
What do you think the chances are that the rare earth metals would be highly useful to somebody like Elon Musk after the mined out of the Ukraine?
Oh my God, of course. They're going to be for artificial intelligence, the rare earth metals. And there's another thing that Ukraine has that nobody talks about, the neon gas. Neon gas is used in a lot of high-level technologies, and I believe the Ukraine supplies something like 70% for the entire world.
Wow.
So they have some very, very profitable mineral deposits in the Ukraine, especially for technologies that are emerging if you're looking in the next 5, 10 to 15 years. So Ukraine is a hotbed for many reasons right now. So the idea that they're going to bring stability back there, the idea that they're going to end this war, that's just a joke. Like you have to be like crazy, like a child to believe that. It just makes no sense. They're making so much money. They're getting so much power. They're getting so many resources. It's just crazy. And I'm sure they're still operating those the illegal labs that they have in the Ukraine, because as long as they're not anywhere. Yeah, as long as those all the biolabs that weren't near the Russian border and aren't near the fighting, they're probably still using them and still operating and still experimenting, because why wouldn't they be?
Well, that's all right. They gave Fauci a pardon, so, he's untouchable now. The biolabs won't come back to bite him in the backside. Now, Trump did say...
Wait, let's address the pardon for a second. How do you pardon someone when they haven't been charged with a crime yet? That's not a pardon. You know what that's called? That's called blanket immunity. He literally just said, we're going to make sure you can't get charged with any crime, which is that no president has the power to do that. No president can just grant blanket immunity. A president can pardon you. In order to be pardoned, you have to be charged, tried, and convicted. Because unless you're convicted, you haven't been, there's nothing to pardon.
That's right.
So how do you pardon someone that hasn't even been charged, let alone tried and convicted? It's literally all word salad for stupid Americans that literally can't understand what they're saying. No. It's that simple.
It is. It's
and they get away with it. And
Yeah.
then and now Trump and now they did that so Trump doesn't have to go after Fauci. So now he has the plausible deniability because he was telling everyone I'm going after Fauci, even though he's the one that gave Fauci the power to impose mask mandates and impose the vaccine mandates, and he did Operation Warp Speed and still takes credit for it for this day. But somehow his supporters believe that he's going to go after Fauci. Where's Fauci? He's got the same retirement plan as Trudeau.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Now, Trump was saying that he wanted to take Greenland and Canada. I mean, is this just all theatre for the masses?
Well, for people that are old enough to remember when Mr. Lou Dobbs was on CNN and he was probably the only person worth watching on mainstream media because he didn't give up and he would tell it how it is. The last segment he did before they fired his ass and kicked him off TV was the North American Union. And
Yeah,
what was that? It was the economic and currency partnership between Canada, United States, Mexico, and Greenland.
yeah,
So, yes, I believe Trump could, in fact, purchase Greenland or try to purchase Greenland and make it part of the States. Why not? Denmark owns it right now. So, why couldn't they just buy it from Denmark if they really wanted to? It's a commodity, it's for sale. It's like going to the car lot and seeing somebody else's used car that they put in the friggin' lot. Well, you can buy it. So, he can technically buy it. So, I see that as a possibility and
yeah,
even could be a probability if they can come up with the money and they can get Denmark to agree, which they probably can with a soft power negotiation. But the idea that they're going to buy Canada or make Canada the 51st state is ridiculous. The North American Union doesn't require that. The North American Union is exactly the same as something called the European Union. And
yeah,
it combined them all into one supercontinent and gave them one currency. But you don't see Spain, Italy, and France becoming one country, did they? They
no,
all maintain their sovereignty on paper anyway, but in reality now they're controlled by Brussels and the Bank of International Settlements,
yeah,
which most people have never even heard of, the BIS, and the United Nations, which is also in Belgium. So Belgium is like, besides London and the Vatican, Brussels is probably the third most evil place on planet Earth, and people don't realize it.
yeah,
And that's basically what they want to do with North America. They want to buy Greenland so it becomes part of the United States. Then they want to merge Canada, U.S., Greenland, and Mexico into one continent of North America. But they don't want to absorb or take over all the countries. They still want to have their own borders. They still want to have their own sovereignty. But they want an economic partnership and they want a one currency.
yeah,
Because in reality, we know the goal is a one world government with one currency. So if you can keep amalgamating all these countries into one giant supercontinent, eventually you can create one giant supercontinent out of the entire world. That's their thinking, and this goes right back to the Club of Rome 1960s. So this is not like it's not like some new thing that just came out.
no. And speaking of the Bank of International Settlements and the lovely central banks of this world, Mark Carney has finished his instructive training by the Bank of England. What will be his role? And should people be very wary of this weasel?
Of course they should be, because guess what he's going to do? He's going to try to do every unpopular agenda that the liberals knew if Trudeau even mentioned it, he would get like castrated.
Yeah,
So he's going to push all this stuff. They're going to use the unholy alliance with the NDP to try to get as much stuff pushed through before the Conservatives obviously win in the fall. Oh, and when the Conservatives do win in the fall, another thing they're going to do that's going to help the home market and why I'm so bullish on the home market is they're going to eliminate the GST for home sales under $1 million. And that's going to spur a lot of buying and a lot of home activity. So that's just another point. But yeah, Carney is going to be very dangerous. He's
yeah,
going to try to push things through under the table, under the radar, small things, death of a thousand cuts type things. And then it's going to take a lot of time to undo the damage. And it's gonna and if and that's assuming the conservatives even really want to undo the damage because we all know they truly work together.
yeah.
Like, let's talk about Pierre Poilievre for a second. Does
Yes.
everybody even know where he came from? Everybody just thinks he's some great conservative leader. He was an orphan that was adopted and raised by two gay men. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, there you go. So, do you think he's going to be any different than Trudeau? He's going to be riding in the LGBT pride parade with the trannies just like Trudeau was. He's going to be enforcing hate speech laws. He's going to be saying that we should have little boys in girls' locker rooms, etc. And he's no different. You see them on TV literally saying the exact same thing about Ukraine, the exact same thing about Israel. He's actually even more bullish on Israel. At least Trudeau, I'll give Trudeau this credit. At least Trudeau had the balls to say if Netanyahu comes to Canada, they would arrest him under the ICC International Criminal Court arrest warrant. Donald Trump rolled out the red carpet for an international war criminal,
Yeah.
literally on trial, wanted for genocide and multitude of war crimes. That's like he's like literally an international supervillain from a comic book, and he's Donald Trump's boss,
Yeah.
basically, literally. And even Canada had the balls to say you can't come here or we'll arrest you. So, and he didn't come here because he knew we were going to actually arrest him. But I bet Poilievre would roll out the red carpet for him just like Trump did, which I think is horrible and kind of disgusting. And that's why I don't think Canada has much hope. Economically, I think there's going to be a boom in Canada for the next 18 months to 2.5 years. But I think by 2027, what you're going to see is I even predict conscription coming back to Canada and the United States. And people will roll their eyes and say that that's crazy. And a lot of people don't even know what conscription is. For those of you that don't know, it's the draft and forced military service, which we had only like 30 or 40 years ago. It's not like it's crazy and out of the realm of possibility. And in fact, if you look around the world, citing Russia and Ukraine war as the number one reason, 30% of NATO countries have reintroduced or are reintroducing conscription. Even weak and tepid countries like Denmark have now introduced conscription, and they even introduced it for females. So now even females will have forced military service in certain NATO countries. So they are setting the stage for a big war. And this is not a war that the United States can win. And let's go back to banks for 1 second, because when you mentioned the BIS, it reminded me of TD Bank. So everybody knows that Canada is like the capital for money laundering in the entire world. Everybody knows that TD Bank got caught in the largest money laundering scandal in history. And so far, they've paid over $5 billion with a B in fines. But a new report has come out, and it was on Forbes, and it showed that they did a very thorough audit of this so-called black market of the TD Bank. And for everybody that doesn't know, our economy is $2 trillion. Economists predict that the black market economy is roughly the same in size as our real economy. Like all the cash businesses, from drugs, prostitution, child trafficking, all that stuff is equivalent to the actual economy. So guess what they uncovered in TD Bank in the last 9 years? 18 trillion with a T dollars unaccounted for, or accounted for in ways that makes it look like it was actually money laundering. Now, if you do the math, 9 years, 18 trillion is 2 trillion a year. Literally almost the exact same as our actual GDP. How scary is that? That is like literally every organized criminal that works through Canada knew that TD Bank is the bank to launder your money at.
Yeah.
And TD Bank was like the official bank for the Mexican drug cartels, the child traffickers, and all the worst of the worst people.
Yeah. Basically, anyone with TD should close their account and go elsewhere, because they are an absolute piece of shit. I used to work for them. I know what they're like. So,
I've done
Chris,
business. I did business banking with them.
yeah.
So.
So your life has been reflective of the real rock and roller, and I should know I have partied with you, but you look fresh. You've got a new look. Is this a new chapter in your life now?
100%. When I get everything settled with my family, I'm going to try to get my EU passport as well. Because I tell this to everybody, the number one way to ensure your freedom, your well being, and your prosperity is to be internationally nomadic. And what does that mean? It means have multiple passports, multiple homes, be involved in multiple banking systems, diversify your assets through multiple types of currency, real estate in different countries, crypto, gold, silver. You have to have it all in today's day and age because we are so volatile and things happen so quickly. You need to be able to pivot on a dime. And yeah, I've been living really healthy in Mexico. I've been training twice a day. I put on like 20 pounds. I think you can tell I look a little bit larger.
Yeah,
So yes, it's been good. And I got the natural tan going on, so I can't complain.
all that
Uh,
vitamin D, it's
I
good
I
for you.
love it in Mexico. The only problem with Mexico is that too many people are finding out about it now, and within 10, 15 years, it's going to be a lot more expensive than it is now.
Yeah, definitely. Now you've got a lot of investments, business, and assets. Are you concerned over the great taking, and what measures are you putting into place to protect yourself?
Like I said, you got to be as diverse as possible, as spread out as possible. The only way to mitigate your risk is to have as many eggs in as many baskets as possible. If you're one of those people that thinks your money is safe all in the bank, in one bank, you're crazy unless you got like 10 grand or something. But if you're anybody with anything in the six figures or higher, you need to be splitting up your wealth. You need to be diversifying, and more than anything, you need to be mitigating your risk because the primary purpose is preserving your principal capital, followed by your return on investment, and followed by your risk mitigation, which goes back to preserving your capital. So as long as you keep those principles in mind, you can be very successful. Like look at the Mexican banking system. You can get a normal bank account here, just like you get in Canada, a savings account,
Yeah,
and meanwhile you get 15% interest annual. Did you hear that, ladies and gentlemen?
yeah,
1.5% interest, not the 0.05% interest you get in Canada that doesn't even outweigh all the fees they charge you every month unless you have like $1 million in the bank. No, you can put $100,000 in a bank in Mexico and get $1,500 almost a month
yeah,
just in passive interest payments.
yeah,
So you do the math.
yeah.
Spread $1 million around, even at 10 to 12%, you can get 10 grand a month. And in Mexico, 10 grand a month is the equivalent to over 20 grand a month anywhere in Canada.
Yeah, that's it. People can live off the interest off their money that's in the Mexican accounts. And I know a lot of people here that are already doing that. Now, you've always been privy to some outstanding information. Would it be fair to say that with the relationships you and your family have had in business, that you do have some friends in high places that can pass key information to help influence not only your decisions, but also the knowledge you have of high level operatives?
My network is expansive internationally and it penetrates all facets of society. So, and people trust me. People know if they need to get something out and they want it out and they want it out properly and they want it out from a reliable source that people will trust, they will give it to me one way or the other.
Yeah.
So, yes, I will answer that with an emphatic yes.
Absolutely. Now, knowing what you know, would you ever consider a career in politics? And do you think it's possible to make a positive impact in this area?
If you're going really local, you can win an election and you can set the examples because it's really not hard. I did run for mayor in Toronto and I shredded everyone in the debates, and every one of my policies, if implemented, would have turned Toronto into a city on the same standard of living as somewhere like Singapore, where they have no garbage, everything is renewable, everything is top quality. And what do we have instead? We got Olivia Chow, and our country is in even worse shambles. But the problem with politics is, in order to win an election, they're all fixed anyway. You have to show that you're willing to do what they tell you to do. And if you're not willing to do what they tell you to do, you're not going to win that election unless it's like a very small local election. And then how much impact can you really have? So politics, like, and if you're in a country like the United States, you're not even going to be able to be considered. You got a choice between you got a choice between Trump or Harris. Those were your choices. No matter how many other people were running, and those are false dichotomies. Like I tell everybody, everyone's like, "Oh, so you don't like Trump, so you would have chosen Harris?" And I
No.
tell everybody the same. I don't play games where I can't win. Like if I came up to you on the street and said, "I have a shit sandwich, and then I have a vomit sandwich. Which one would you like to eat?" I'm pretty sure the vast majority of people would say neither. If I walked up to them and said, I'll punch you in the face or I'll kick you in the nuts. Which one would you like? They would probably say neither. But when they're presented the same friggin' idea with an election, they've been programmed by so much media that they believe that they have to vote and they believe that their vote matters. And that's how the dog and pony show goes. And then they get you to vote and you justify it and rationalize it and say, well, that was the better choice or that was the lesser of two evils. That's my favorite, the lesser of two evils. So I'm going to vote, support, get behind evil, acknowledge it's evil, and then I'm going to act surprised, I'm going to act hurt, and I'm going to act angry that that evil does evil and doesn't improve my life. It's absolutely mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, no, it is. You're right. But knowing that this is the system and how it works, who would you say ultimately controls and runs the world?
We already know the answer to that.
I do.
Zionist horde. It's very obvious. They control the banks. They control the medical establishments that jabbed you with vaccines, that have paid more fines than any other companies in history for literally killing you. They control the whole LGBT agenda that is not coincidentally called pride. What is pride, ladies and gentlemen? It's not just one of the 7 deadly sins. It is the origin of all sin. So they literally want you to embrace the origin of all sin because that's going to proliferate the other 6 deadly sins across society. And you cannot say that Canada is better off now that we have Pride season. Remember when it was just a parade for the day? Then it was a month. Now it's from June to September, and now it's legal for grown men to walk around with their penises out. So, and who controls all this? Who owns OnlyFans? A Zionist. Who owns Pornhub? A Jewish rabbi. Who owns the entire Hollywood industry? They pretend like they don't, but they do. Yeah. So what don't they own? Let's go to the major bank websites like Morgan Stanley. Let's look at their top executives. So how is it that they represent like less than 1% of the U.S. population, but they're like 75% of the board of directors of the major banks that make up the Federal Reserve, which is what funds the United States of America, which, by the way, it just so happens to collect trillions of dollars in interest payments every friggin' year from Americans.
Yeah.
So, gee, I wonder who controls you. Maybe the people that control your money, control your government, control your medical establishment, control your media. We didn't even talk about the media. Where does 70% of all the media funding come from? It comes from the pharmaceutical companies. And who owns the pharmaceutical companies? The same people that own the media channels. Surprise.
Yeah, that's it. And it's the same with AIPAC as well. When they look into the amount of members within AIPAC as well, it's grossly disproportionate in regards to the other people within the arena of politics. It's absolutely insane. Now,
and where does AIPAC get its money from? Guess what? Where does AIPAC get its money from? The United States of America, every January, takes out a loan, immediately starts paying interest on that loan for billions, gives those billions to Israel, and Israel disburses it to like a few hundred million at least a year to AIPAC, which is the American Israeli Public Action Committee. And now AIPAC makes or breaks your political campaign. So if you are not pro-Israeli, for people that don't know what AIPAC is, they will destroy you. In fact, you have to write a letter as a senator, congressman, etc., to AIPAC acknowledging your subservience to Israel and acknowledging that you will put Israeli interests above the interests of the United States when called upon, or you will not be qualified to be a member of the United States of America government. And if that wasn't bad enough, why is it that Israeli dual citizens can be members of the U.S. government? Could you imagine if a Chinese or Russian dual citizen wanted to be part of the U.S. government? It would be absolutely unheard of. It would be ridiculous. But if you're Israeli and you totally serve Israel first, second, and third over the United States, you can still be part of the U.S. government.
That's it.
Make it make sense.
Absolutely insane. Now, there was talks about a fight a while back and some heated arguments between yourself and the raging dissident Jeremy Mackenzie. Have you guys settled this now? And would it be better?
It's very simple, Chris. He was talking crap about how Canada's going to be fine. I said Canada's not going to be fine. He
Yeah,
said he wanted to debate me. And then I said, sure, let's debate. So I actually said, let's get a contract official debate like the ones I did when I was running for mayor, when everybody signed on to the rules. And he said, no, you know what? I don't want to debate you. I want to fight you, MMA style. I said, okay, let's do both. And he said, okay, I'll do that. So I got a contract made. I paid thousands of dollars to get an actual contract created that would allow us to have the debate and allow us to have the fight. And he made every excuse in the book not to sign it and came up with every excuse and tried to pretend like I was afraid. He doesn't want to debate me because I will absolutely eviscerate him. And he obviously doesn't want to fight me because he's not a fighter. Like, I'm not going to say I'm a UFC fighter, but I have fought before and I know and I have trained extensively. So against somebody like him, who's a podcaster with a big mouth, who's never fought in his life, it would be an absolute joke. It would be like me going and fighting an actual UFC fighter. I would get my teeth kicked in, just like he would get his teeth kicked in by me. So that's why he came up with every excuse to try to save face and try to squiggle out of the debate and squiggle out of the fight. And the debate topic was, should people leave Canada? Is Canada going to get better or worse in the next 5, 10, and 20 years? And I was on the side that Canada's going to get worse. He was on the side that Canada was going to get better. We were going to have 3 rounds, a certain amount of time to talk each, because he wanted to do it on his podcast. Why? So he can mute me whenever he wants. He can put sound effects over me whenever he wants. He can put his crowd to talk over me whenever he wants. And he can go as long as he wants, cut me off whenever he wants. He would have complete control. There would be no rules. It wouldn't even be a debate. It would just be a shouting match where he would just talk his shit like he always does on every one of his podcasts. So I wanted a moderator like you. You were even the person we were going to ask to be the moderator, if you remember.
yeah.
And you would have simply sat there and said, okay, you got your 7 or 10 minutes, talk. Time's up. You got your 10 minutes, talk. And if either of us interrupted the other, you'd shut us down. And there was a clause for 3 interruptions, you lose the debate. And he didn't want to agree to that either because he knew he couldn't just sit there and let me talk for 10 minutes because I could talk and bring facts and make him look like an idiot. And then when he got 10 minutes to talk, he'd be sitting there like this. Just like he'd be on his back in the ring getting his head kicked in. And that's why he ran away from the debate and he ran away from the fight. Because I saw a video of him just the other day pretending like I ran away. I ran away, buddy. I go back and forth between Canada and the U.S., Canada and Mexico literally every month. I was in Canada 2 weeks ago. I was in Canada in December. I was in Canada in September. So, yeah, I'm back and forth. I travel because I can. I travel because it's better for my lifestyle, not because I'm afraid of Jeremy. Jeremy's afraid of me. Jeremy would not even come into the same room as me because if he would, I'll fly to him tomorrow if he really wants. I'll be in Canada February 18th to 20th. If he wants to come to Ottawa, we'll come there. I'll put a white line in the floor. I'll say, if you really want to fight me, walk across this line. That'll show that you're accepting the fight under Canadian law. We can have a consensual fist fight, no weapons, none of that bullshit. Not trying to kill each other. Someone will intervene before that happens. So let's see if you're really that tough. Step across the line. I will bet you my house that he doesn't step across that line because he doesn't actually want to fight. He just wants to pretend like he does because that's what he does. He pretends about everything. He's the fakest person in Canada, and he's Canada's biggest bitch. That's his actually official title.
Right. Now, you had a lot of arrests and charges over the years for non-compliance to government mandates and rules. Did you manage to beat all the charges, or do you still have stuff looming in the background for you?
I have one charge outstanding when they charged me with the death threats when I ran for mayor of Toronto, which is a completely frivolous charge with absolutely no evidence. In fact, he had the opposite of evidence. He told somebody that he had a recording of me giving a death threat, And when he played the recording, there was no death threat whatsoever. And he said, "Oh, it was on a part that wasn't recorded." So yeah, he only recorded part of our conversation, and conveniently, the part that's incriminating wasn't recorded. That's the supposed evidence. If it was anybody else, it wouldn't even be a charge. But because it's me, you could call the police right after this and say I threatened to kill you, even though they can watch this whole stream and there's no threat of any kind. I would somehow still get charged and picked up and arrested.
Oh, fucking it. Ridiculous.
You
Absolutely
think,
ridiculous.
you think I'm joking? You know what my bail was for that?
Go on.
When the judge saw me the next morning, and they put me in a cell the entire day and night. I went there first thing in the morning because I thought they might be nice enough to give me a promise to appear since it was the weakest charge of all time. But no, they made sure to keep me in jail all day, all night, and have to do a bail hearing the next morning. And they put a guy in the cell beside me that did nothing but sing like he was on drugs. And he sang everything from Celine Dion, Backstreet Boys, everything with the worst singing voice possible, but he knew every damn word. And of all the tortures I got every time I got arrested, and they tortured me virtually every time, that was probably the worst torture. And then when I went to bail hearing in the morning, the judge literally laughed me out of the courtroom. $0 bail,
Yeah.
zero conditions, zero recog. The only thing I wasn't allowed to do was contact the guy that I supposedly threatened to kill. And they let me out of jail with no bail, no money, no surety, no conditions. That's how weak that case is.
And you didn't threaten
But
to
they'll
kill the
still,
guy singing Celine Dion in the cell next door.
oh, buddy, his heart will go on. That song is forever in my brain now. Like if
Oh,
I hear it, it brings up trauma.
oh my word. Now, if you had the ability,
Imagine that I need a trigger warning for Celine Dion, and I don't even use the word trigger warning.
oh, so if you had the ability to change one thing in the world, what would it be?
Who's in charge?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah,
Can you imagine how the world would be?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And the thing
so can
is,
I.
do you think humanity actually has the numbers and the ability to remove this overreaching charge that is in power? If people just woke up to what was going on around the world and realized tomorrow that they're shouting at puppets and not the masters.
If people actually realized, it would be over instantaneously. It'd be like magic. It literally would be like magic. But what do they do instead? They distract them and give them little tidbits to try to satisfy them because everybody wants that now. Everybody's realizing that we're going in the wrong direction. So what do? Trump wins. He pardons the J6 protesters. He takes trannies out of sports. He takes trannies out of prisons. And people feel like they're getting wins. And they are getting little wins. But in the grand scheme of things, that's not really going to change your life. So we gotta not be satisfied with the little wins that we get because when you give the left an inch, they take 10 miles. So we gotta start taking miles and miles back, and we gotta not just take those miles back. We gotta change our entire attitude and our way of thinking so we can never go down those roads again. Because I guarantee you, in 2027, if they pull another lockdown, everybody who complied last time will comply this time. You can go to Canada right now, talk to 10 Canadians. 9 out of 10 of them will look at you like this. I never complied, bro. I didn't wear a mask. I'm like, oh, really? So who are the 99% of people walking around in the mask? It wasn't any of you, anyone I talked to, but everyone was somehow wearing it. And then I asked this question to all the people that I know complied that are either jabbed or wore the mask or locked down, whatever. I said, well, did you learn anything? They go, oh, yeah, we learned a lot. I go, oh, really? Do you think it's going to happen again? Yeah, probably, but I won't comply like I did this time. I go, okay. So what did you change and how did you prepare to enable yourself to be in a position not to comply? Did you get an online job, remote job, so you don't have to worry about being non-essential or having your business closed down? Did you get another passport or a residency somewhere? Do you have a house where you don't have to pay a mortgage or pay rent? Did you get extra food that you can last for a few months? And their answer to all of this is no. And I say, so what did you change about your life that's going to make it so you won't comply like last time? And they just go quiet. So that's how I know. Like, we might have collectively enhanced society, and we might have collectively brought up everyone's conscience temporarily. But did we make that breakthrough to the next level where everybody's now enlightened? Absolutely not. If we did, Canada wouldn't still be going totally down the toilet.
Yeah. And that's it. You know, the amount of people that show real patriotism for Canada, especially right now, we're seeing everyone saying, buy Canadian, do this, do that. And like, if I question it and say, okay, you know, well, what is Canadian anymore? What are we buying in Canada? What can we change? They'll always throw something at me. They'll find out that I'm not Canadian, and it'll be, oh, well, you know, you went there for the trucker convoy and this, that, and the other. And I look at the truckers convoy now, and as much as it was a big thing in Canadian history and within freedom, what really did it achieve considering the state of Canada at its current moment?
To be honest, I believe the trucker convoy was the beginning of the end of the mandates, especially the cross border mandates and blocking Canadians from leaving the country. So, in that regard, it was good.
Yeah.
But it also was the moment that they broke the spirit of Canadians. Because as soon as they brought in all those soldiers, as soon as they froze Canadians' bank accounts, as soon as they were breaking truckers' bones and running old women over with horses, and the people saw how far the government was willing to go, how many laws they were willing to break, how they embarrassingly investigated themselves and found no wrongdoing, how the citizens even more embarrassingly investigated them, found wrongdoing, and nothing happened. It just showed that there's no consequences to their actions. They will break any law, any moral that they can, and all they care about, like every government, the number one priority for every government, ladies and gentlemen, is continuity of government. Not your rights, not your freedoms, not your well being, not your safety, none of that. All the government cares about is continuity of government. If you don't remember anything else from this interview, remember that. Because as long as you understand that you are 100% expendable in the eyes of the government, whether it's wartime or not, you are expendable. You are considered an expendable asset, and they will literally liquidate you in the worst possible way without any thought. You and your children, that's when you're finally going to start to understand the true state of the world. And Harry Truman said this, and this is one of my favorite quotes, and I want everybody to remember this like I remember it. And why did I pick Harry Truman? Because he killed more people than anyone else I know in the shortest amount of time. How did he do that? He dropped the two atomic bombs, the two only atomic bombs that were ever used, or at least admitted to be used in war.
Yeah.
And what did this man say? He said, the truth, when you finally chase it down, is almost always far worse than your darkest visions or fears. Let that sink in, ladies and gentlemen. So, whatever you think your government's doing, whatever you can imagine your government's doing, the reality, the truth that we try to find and we try to bring to you is worse than you can imagine, even worse than I can imagine. And I imagine some pretty sick and twisted shit.
Yeah. I mean, what kind of trick is Trudeau playing? He's playing some card at the moment where he's stepping down from his position. But has this enacted something that there seems to be more behind this stepping down from his position? You know, is there any reason that right now that the country would be leaderless in regards to him not being supposedly in charge? There seems to be a lot more behind this than appears to meet the eye. Do you really know what's going on with that?
I believe that it's a combination of him being worried that he might actually be held accountable for his actions in the different investigations, especially the insider trading investigation, where he invested in the lipid nanoparticle that's part of the mRNA vaccines and made all this money, and they can trace that he did. So he can say whatever he wants about it.
That was with
The
Arbutus and Locutus, wasn't it?
Yes, the Aga Khan, who was his good friend and his protector, just died. So he lost that huge support and that huge lifeline and that escape route. And then the other thing is, it's just better for them politically. He's literally like a cancer to the Liberal Party. If he was still on the ticket in the fall, they're going to lose a lot more seats than they would without him. So they're basically cutting their losses by getting rid of him. So I think it's a combination of all those things. And I also believe I have to look into this to verify. So and when I say this, I'm speculating because normally I say things that are facts, but the once in a while where I say something that is speculation, I will give a notice, and that's why I use the word speculation 4 times now, so nobody can quote me on this. But at one point, Trudeau was very afraid about the Honey and Barry Sherman murders. And for those of
Definitely.
people that don't know who Honey and Barry Sherman are, they were the owners of Apotex Pharmaceuticals. And what was weird about their murder is that it was clearly a murder suicide, but the media reported it as just a suicide. And then the cops reported it as a murder suicide. And it was investigated. And then the court case was sealed. And it was sealed by Trudeau.
Fucking hell.
And then 3 days after he sealed it, they closed down the courts for COVID. Now, why did they seal the case and what was the case about? Well, it gets very interesting because Harry and the Shermans not only owned Apotex Pharmaceuticals, they got a special drug made in 2018 in very large quantities. Maybe you heard of it. Hydroxychloroquine. So they got this made 2 years before COVID and had a massive stockpile of it set up. Now, if that wasn't incriminating enough, they were also one of the largest donors to the Liberal campaign. However, they were under scrutiny for funding it illegally. And in fact, they were subpoenaed by the RCMP to testify against Trudeau to show that they basically were giving him illegal campaign financing. So Trudeau was going to be implicated if these people were able to testify for the RCMP, which they were forced to by subpoena. However, instead they ended up dead. And the surviving son who had nothing to do with the business, who I know personally because he went to my chiropractor, he operates marinas and boats, so he has nothing to do with the pharmaceutical industry, and he just wanted to stay alive. So he did not want to unseal these cases. And this man had a 4-man armed guard security team with him at all times. I saw them myself with my own eyes, literally wherever he went. They had 2 men by the door and 2 men standing beside him at all times. That's how worried he was for his life. So that's another reason I think Trudeau is leaving, but that's just speculation. Do I believe he was involved with those murders? 100% He might not have had them murdered, but they were definitely murdered because they would implicate Trudeau. And I'm saying that here. If anybody wants to check it out, go check it out.
Yeah, definitely. Before we wrap it up, I've got one more thing. Now, do too many people in the freedom movement treat it as a form of entertainment? And are the majority now massively unprepared mentally and physically for what we're going to face?
That's an understatement of the year. The freedom movement became, first of all, a lot of people were in the freedom movement for the wrong reasons in the first place, either money, fame, or other things. So already that caused division, and that caused distrust, and that caused a lot of the movement to seem not genuine, and a lot of them weren't. And like I said, not too many people have done anything to prepare for the next round, but you have every Canadian insisting that as long as they're staying in Canada and they're enduring the lower standard of living each year and the higher cost of living each year, they're somehow fighting for Canada. That's a very dangerous mindset because the reality is all you're doing is tolerating a worse existence, which is exactly what I keep telling everyone is going to happen. I go, the longer you stay there, the worse it's going to get. And they acknowledge that this is true, but then they try to rationalize and justify it by saying, well, by staying here, I'm a fighter. You're not a fighter for doing nothing to improve your situation. You're the opposite of a fighter. It's just like with COVID, where they told you you're a hero for wearing the mask. No, you're the opposite. And it's the exact same thing when you try to tell me that you're fighting by staying there. No, you're just too lazy to do your research and you're too lazy to do what you need to do to improve your life. Was it really that hard to leave Canada? It wasn't that hard for me. It's not that hard for you. I helped hundreds of other people do it. And every single person that left Canada It's just like all the people that didn't take the vaccine. Not one of the people that didn't take the vaccine regret it. Not one of the people that left Canada regret it. But every single one of you that stays there, just like every single one of you that took the jab, are going to regret it. I promise you.
Yeah, guarantee it. Now, as we part company now, what would be your parting words to everybody here today?
I would tell everybody that if you live in Canada, enjoy the next couple of years. If you live in the United States, enjoy the next couple of years because I think you're going to get a good couple of years. I think these are going to be years where you can actually be prosperous, make some money, save some money, improve your situation, and then start making alternative plans. It's going to get harder and harder to leave. They already have the exit tax in Canada. Pretty soon it's going to turn into a percentage of your wealth when you try to leave. In the United States, they have the inheritance tax. When you die and try to pass your stuff off to your children, they can take up to 50% of it. This is after you've already been taxed your entire life. So for people that live in the States, organize your assets into a trust. When you do that and you die, the trust, you can bring it, give it to whoever you want. It cannot be taxed. They cannot take from it. You can put houses, vehicles, money, stocks, gold, silver, oil holdings, anything you want can be put in the trust. Do not let the government take your money. The government is coming after you because we are consolidating. Why are we consolidating? Because there's not going to be enough jobs for people to survive. Why? It's a little something called AI. I've been talking about this for 5 years. I said by 2030, AI is going to take something like 1 billion jobs away from humanity. So what are those 1 billion people that were previously working supposed to do? Go on UBI that doesn't exist? No, they're going to be on whatever welfare there is, trying to scrape to get by. The standard of living is going to drop significantly for a lot of people. And a lot of people are going to be out of work permanently. And that number is only going to keep rising while our population rises. So why do you think they want another pandemic? Why do you think they want a world war? That is the fastest and most efficient way of removing the population. And why do you think they make you pay into Social Security and pensions all your life? Because they want to kill you by the time when you right after you turn 65. So you pay into it for what, 50 years, and you get the benefits for a few months, and then you die and they don't have to pay you anymore. It's a genius scam, and people have still not caught on to this. People have no idea. And the purchasing power in Canada and the United States. Let's go. I want people to end with this so they can understand how far we've fallen. When my parents were growing up in the 60s, the average man made $10,000 a year. The average house cost 30 grand. So with 3 years salary, you could buy a house, mortgage free, interest free, fully paid for, done and done. That's what the American dream was, attainable to everybody. Nowadays, that same man makes 50 grand a year, but that house costs over $1 million. You need 20 years salary to purchase that house. 20 years. And in order to get 20 years salary, you're not going to be able to save that in 20 years because you've got expenses. So what do you do instead? You get a mortgage, which still takes you almost 10 years to get the down payment for. And now your mortgage is going to last 40 years under the new terms. So it's, instead of 3 years to purchase a house, interest and mortgage free, it's now going to take you 50 years. So is house ownership actually attainable to the average person? Absolutely not. In Quebec, 71% of people are already renters. And every single province in Canada, the renters are rising every year and the homeowners are dropping. And what do we know they want by 2030? They want you to own nothing and be happy. And ladies and gentlemen, if you can't even afford a house, you think you're going to be able to afford a car or all the other luxuries that your parents and grandparents and you were accustomed to many years ago? No, you're not. And that's where Canada's heading. And this is what you all have to understand. So you need to make your money now. You need to make other alternatives. So you don't necessarily have to leave Canada. I didn't leave. I still have a Canadian passport. I still have a business there. I still have homes there. But I have one foot out the door and I can leave whenever I want. That's the difference. Yeah. Options, ladies and gentlemen, and freedom. That's what we fought for this entire time. So why wouldn't I do everything I can to give myself as much freedom as possible and preserve as much freedom as possible, even under the worst case scenario conditions?
Yeah, absolutely. Great words, Chris. As we always say here on the Atlantic Underground podcast, believe nothing and question everything. Thanks for coming on again. It's great to see you. Keep in touch.
Love you, brother.
And we'll talk soon, mate. Take care.
Cheers.